My Lords, I too thank the noble Lord Alton, for initiating this debate. In my maiden speech in this House, I spoke on the United Nations doctrine of responsibility to protect, and as the debate proceeded, it was clear that human rights stand at the centre, but never in an individualist sense of that word. In other words, it's not my rights, but rather the rights of all humankind, seen in social solidarity. Some 15 years ago, with the noble Baroness Cox, I remember looking with others for ways of safeguarding entire communities at the height of the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. That is, of course, still a part of the world where these tensions remain and remain latent. But more recently, indeed, this September, I delivered to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office a letter addressed to the Prime Minister and signed by a coalition of some 30 Anglican and Roman Catholic bishops and also by Jewish rabbis. The initiative was taken by Baba Tampa and the Save the Congo campaign. Those of us with long memories will know that the Congo has been a human disaster area for more than half a century, ever since independence. The situation in the Congo amounts to a permanent state of crisis with ever-renewed spates of atrocity, and it requires concerted international effort to counter this. And so in the light of these issues, and particularly with the comments of the Foreign Secretary on a foreign policy with conscience, this debate comes at a timely moment. That concept of a policy with conscience under different names has a long history. It brings into focus both national enlightened self-interest, but also a concern that the more powerful nations have a responsibility to defend those that are weaker, and especially when human rights are flagrantly ignored or even despised. In his recent book, reviewing a selection of British foreign secretaries in the past 200 years, the noble Lord Hurd of Westwell has pointed to two contrasting approaches. The first has been rather more swashbuckling and interventionist, the second more reactive or responsive. My instinct is that in the context of this debate, we are looking for a responsive approach, tempered both by conscience and a proper political pragmatism. Indeed, it echoes that stamp of Christian realism established by the American theologian and political theorist Reinhold Niebuhr. The Congo focuses this dilemma at the present time most sharply, perhaps. In his reply to the coalition of religious leaders that I recently led to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Prime Minister stated unequivocally that human rights abuses, sexual violence and impunity continue to threaten civilians on a daily basis in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He outlined some of the efforts that Her Majesty's government are making at present, and these crucial efforts have happily continued throughout both the present and previous administrations in Britain. This debate also follows very closely on from the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, focusing world attention on the endemic levels of rape and violence against women in the Congo. The use of rape to punish, displace, or destroy women in communities in times of conflict has been well documented in recent conflicts around the world. The catastrophic abuse of an individual's body is used to discipline or consistently undermine the social body. Fear produces control. The rape of women allows for the rape of a country and the taking of its easily appropriable natural resources by destroying the social fabric. So the question is one of education and teaching people to lay hold of their rights. Women's human rights defenders are, as the Conservative Human Rights Commission's recent report supporting women human rights defenders says, some of the most effective campaigners, and they need our support. I welcome the Conservative Party's Human Rights Commission's recommendations based on the doctrine of the responsibility to protect. It is a responsibility placed not only on governments and international bodies, but it requires something from every one of us. It is a common responsibility based on a common humanity. None of this is easy, of course. Indeed, it can be transformed immediately into a foreign policy which is both effective in combating brutality, human rights abuses and genocide without direct military intervention. Earlier, I referred to a responsive approach, tempered both by conscience and a proper political pragmatism. This will require initially intelligent and politically targeted diplomacy. It will also mean similarly targeted approaches to aid. The situation in the Congo makes it only too plain that the continuing catastrophe is made worse by the collusion and even intervention of some neighbouring states. Her Majesty's government is clearly aware of this, and I will want to press for an even greater recognition of the need to put pressure on other states. And I'm glad to pick up an image just used by the Noble Earl, the Earl of Sandwich, that of stick and carrot. The stick will hopefully be diplomacy and not military intervention. The carrot will be careful placing of aid programmes. Ultimately, there may tragically be the need for a military intervention, but that can only happen when it is prosecuted by an internationally legitimate authority. In most cases, this will be the United Nations, following through its responsibility to protect the place from which I began. Looking back to the American Revolution, Thomas Jefferson reflected, "During the late war, I had an infallible rule for deciding what Great Britain would do on every occasion. It was to consider what they ought to do and to take the reverse of that, as they would assuredly do. And I can say with truth that I was never deceived." Hopefully, that is not a comment that a statesman should ever make of Britain today.